What's up everyone, it's Tensei here and today I will be talking about what I think of the new changes to the Speed Duel format as of November 1st, 2021. So I'm sure a lot of people already saw the changes. In short, inner conflict is just gone, like trash. Twisted personality is kinda meh, I don't think a lot of people will use it if you don't get any counters from burn. Cocoon is like fine. It's a lot slower, so you'll have to play some slower engines, like maybe Apprentice or Decoichi again. Just can't like usually get that 3500 go into 4K with just one summon per turn. But it's still the most playable out of the nerfed decks, I think, so we can probably see that later. And the deck that everyone's talking about mostly is, of course, Unions. So, Unions did not get hit by the skill change, but they did get, like, the combination skill did not get changed at all. I think they didn't want to change because most of all, it's kind of restricted to this one deck, so it's not like the other decks that just kind of get stronger with power creep. But also it was the newest skill, so all of the other decks were printed before Battle City, and there's been no new releases since the Battle City box, so that might have contributed to it as well. But yeah, a lot of people are even talking about tier 0 unions. In my opinion, it's not going to be tier 0, since there's a lot of counters for them. People might be forced to play more of these counters in their side decks and main decks combined, but I think it's not going to be tier 0. There's a lot of other playable stuff. Like this might be the deck to beat for now, or at least for the foreseeable future, unless people discover something new or the counters just prove too powerful. And yeah, speaking of the counters, we have Banisher of the Radiance, Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer, Ally of Justice Core Destroyer, and the already very popular Lost Wind, Diffusion, and yeah, these are very easy to use and have some coverage through other matchups as well, like Kaiku and Banisher just wrecking any graveyard centric decks, like maybe Skull Servants or Relinquished or Magnet Warriors. They have a lot of like good matchups. They kinda like they were really bad into some inner conflict and twisted builds, and even some like Moth doesn't really care about the grave that much compared to like unions. So especially Kaiku with an 1800 body is probably a really solid main deck choice, just because a lot of people will be trying out unions. Banisher is a little smaller, but if you can get Banisher to stick on the field with like Lost Wind, Widespread, Book of Moon, Floodgate, it's going to be really annoying for the opponent to deal with. It has a really low defense, so if you just Book of Moon it, it gets run over even by Sphere Kuribo, but it's really good against grave decks. And then Ally of Justice Core Destroyer, especially for Spellproof Armor decks, since it's a machine, is really nice for outing the Union monsters, so the fusions will just get destroyed by battle with this. And yeah, there's not a lot they can do with the monsters themselves. You can always like technically Book of Moon this, but if you're playing Spellproof Armor, which is probably going to be a solid deck as well, you can just make this immune to spells, and that's really going to help in that matchup. And well, for other decks, yeah, if your opponent's trying fairies or charging Gaia, it's not like just for unions, but yeah, that's the main point. And then Lost Wind, of course, stopping the unions from destroying cards. So keeping your stuff safe, not like just dying to an XYZ Dragon Cannon popping your entire field, and making them smaller. A good XYZ player will probably play some stuff in defense, so you might have to steal out the monster. See, this only has attack, so yeah, you can't just like run over an XYZ Dragon Cannon with a breaker. And for other matchups, yeah, can stop a King of the Skull Servants or Magnet Warriors, Relinquished, some fusion stuff, I guess. or something that's summoned with Shadow Reborn, if people pick up that skill more. And then Diffusion is a really good spell card that's gotten a little more popular, like for the last 2 months. And yeah, you just put the unions back instantly, and with the new ruling that you can respond to skill summons before the the new change that you can use fast effects on skill resolutions, you can just defuse their monster before they even activate it, making this card a lot better. And speaking of that change, we have Floodgate Trap Hole and Book of Moon. So Book of Moon can now also just make the monster go face down before it activates its effect, and it's a really versatile card. So yeah, it's not as strong as Diffusion, but you can use it against like any deck, and even like combo with some of your own stuff like Relinquished. So yeah, Book of Moon absolutely remains a staple and even gains a boost in my opinion. Floodgate as well can now, after a change, actually make the unions go face down, the union fusions go face down after a fusion summon, and they can't fuse them. They don't run a lot of tribute monsters, so it's going to be stuck there for a while for you to just destroy with, let's say, Noblemen of Crossout or something later. Yeah, you can just make it stay there until you can out it. And yeah, the XYZ deck will have to adapt to some of these changes, of course, like the monsters can be Book of Moon, or hit by offerings, or just run over with a fusion if they get Hangar. So there are outs, but it's going to be rough if people prepare a lot for the matchup. And another card that can help, we'll have to see if this actually gets popular. It has some issues, but Rare Metalmorph can actually negate the Book of Moon if you have it set up already or from previous turn. So this could become more useful as a counter Diffusion and Book of Moon, but it's a little slow. Like, let's say your opponent goes first and sets a Diffusion. If you try to go into a fusion on your first turn, yeah, you can't use this, and then on your opponent's turn, well, okay, if they draw a Diffusion, then it's going to be live on your opponent's turn. That's cool, but then yeah, it's a little slow, but I think it's potentially cool, and the battle trick is neat as well, making your White Dragon head 2k, so it's going to be running over most normal summons. And then, of course, Obelisk the Tormentor has been used inside decks before, and without Inner Conflict or Twisted Personality, there are fewer outs for this in the meta, which is something to maybe consider. And yeah, you might need outs for this, unless you just believe you can win before this hits the field, or yeah. But it can be a problem. Notably, well, Santa Claus and Widespread Ruin are pretty generic outs for it, as well as Kelbeck, I guess. So these don't target, but Santa Claus is a lot worse since Moth can't basically run it anymore. You definitely don't want to like use Santa Claus, wait a turn, then Cocoon. So yeah, Santa Claus is kinda out of the meta unless like Obelisk Turbo somehow becomes good, but I kinda doubt it. And Widespread Ruin is pretty generic, but it's a battle trap, so maybe they just sit on the Obelisk and never let you resolve Widespread. And yeah, then Magnet Warriors. The field spell easily outs Obelisk the Tormentor, which is a little unfortunate, but yeah, you just don't side in Obelisk in that matchup. It's really that easy. Magnets are going to be really nice as well. With some of the top competitors gone, they kind of just vibe a lot. You don't die to Moth that often, if people even play Moth. I'm sure people will play Moth a little, but when they do, they will kill you a lot less. So you will have time to reset up, destroy the Moth maybe, and just wall up with this. And after they use their Moth push, it's really easy to defend. It's still easy, weak to spell trap removal, but overall I think magnets are looking pretty solid. Yeah, so that's for the unions mostly. Yeah, I guess we can move on to the next things then. So, well, I kind of said IC. Well, okay, IC is trash. I'm not going to go back on that. But I think Apprentice Magician is still kind of promising. You could build like a tribute deck with it using maybe Kaiser Glider or Grand Mark, Jinzo, and you can't use Inner Conflict anymore, but Apprentice Magician is kind of solid, summoning Old Vindictive Magician for removal, and then tributing for something, maybe even using Creature Swap. You can make that work with another skill, and I'll soon talk about skills you can use with this. But I'd like to note first that with like these small things, Magician of Faith is a cool flip monster in my opinion, and can be tutored with Apprentice. And then you have the Man-Eater Bug and the Koichi. So the biggest problem with these flip effect monsters for a while was that Inner Conflict taking them is a huge tempo swing. Like, you set this Magician of Faith, then your opponent like, okay, Cyclone on the back row, take your monster, flip, then Magician of Faith, add it back. And that's never a position you want to be in. Now, with specifically Magician of Faith, there might be a lack of power spells in the format still to make it a lot less desirable than it has been in past advanced format. In the past in advanced format, there's no broken power spells really that you just like can't draw into maybe later with Allure or the Koichi, but it's looking a little more promising at least. Man-Eater Bug. The best thing with it is that if you are playing a Moth deck, you might be wanting to go more passive now, and this is a more passive card, and it can be recycled with Cocoon for some extra draws to get into Parasite faster, and yeah, you don't have to worry about conflict anymore. And finally, the Koichi. I played some machine deck, maybe like, I was testing Heavy Metal Raiders for fun. It's a trash deck still, but yeah, I mean, the Koichi is fine. Anyway, I played against Conflict. They steal this, flip it, draw, and then tribute it. So not only do they steal my monster, gain a tribute monster with it, they also just get a free draw, making it really annoying to run in any deck. But maybe now you can play again with like some machines and have fun with the Koichi. Well, I'll just lay these here. So there are some options to play with like level 4 good stuff. So while the Monarch decks are at least, if not dead, they'll have to adapt a lot. But I could see a return to some of the past speed duel formats of like generic warrior deck or just like generic beatdown with Kaiku, Breaker. But there's just like an empty void to fill after Inner Conflict was destroyed by the updated text. So eradicating Aerosol with the Hidden Parasite skill is still like a twice per duel Dark Hole if you draw the Aerosol. Well, just for face-up monsters, but you know, that's good enough a lot of the time. And yeah, free East use removal. Unfortunately, actually, it's even really good against the Spellproof Armor deck, since you're going to be turning their monsters into insects. So even if you don't draw this, you can use the skill with a Book of Moon in a pinch in that matchup. So yeah, I do predict people will try that again with like some maybe warriors, just some good level 4s. Then Shadow Reborn hasn't seen a lot of play at all, and probably not competitive play. Basically, yeah, I don't think it's been seeing competitive play, but Shadow Reborn is a pretty generic skill, and with no good generic skill as strong as Inner Conflict or Twisted Personality, you could maybe see this a little more. If you play want to play some Apprentice Monarch deck now, I could see you first tribute summon a Monarch or like Kaiser Glider or Jinzo with the Apprentice engine, and then if it gets outed, you revive it back with this. Now the weakness here is that you can't do any damage the turn you use this. So Inner Conflict was really good at OTKing or just like finishing the game off of like half life points. you can't finish the game after you use Shadow Reborn, but it's just like a +1 from Grave, and if you really want, you can make it faster with Foolish Burial or Discard Engines. But yeah, then you have to go neg first in a lot of cases, so that's faster, but a little less powerful than reviving a powerful monster you brought on the field with normal means in some ways. And I'm just gonna attack. This is also like a cool generic skill in a way, but it just got outclassed by Twisted and Conflict. But now it still kind of needs better battle traps to be worthwhile. But you can like, the 100 attack boost is small, but it can be a difference between your Breaker running overcharging Gaia, or just like in a mirror match, just running over like a Blade Knight with your Blade Knight. It's a little underwhelming in some cases, but I could see people try to use it in beatdown decks. With Copycat you can even like run over anything, since it's always going to be 100 higher. So that's cute. No More Mrs. Nicema is also like just a generic back row removal skill, and you can use it with like Black Stego and Rat deck, where this is really good against like Magnets. Magnets can't out Black Stego with No More Mrs. Nicema unless they use some specific cards like Skill Successor. But this will stall a lot. But even if you're not like playing that, you can use Skill Successor with Nicema and just destroy Zomas and stuff easily. I think it's potentially pretty nice. And there's the Beast Warrior cards like Enraged Battleox and Phantom Beast Wildhorn that do piercing, letting you get even more value from No More Mrs. Nicema. But on the other hand, once you flip it over, it's mandatory. So if you're the only player with back row, you might have to destroy your own cards, so please pay attention to your own situation under this skill. And Aroma Strategy plus Archmage Oath is basically a once per turn pay 500 and draw a card. Again, this has been outclassed before. The Archmage Oath came out in Battle City, and it was clearly designed to work with Aroma Strategy, but it just never felt worthwhile with. Like, why won't you play Inner Conflict instead? That's going to be a bigger tempo push. It's fun. I'd like to see people try this engine, and like drawing is fine, although in 20 cards you're pretty consistent already, so I can see why some people might not like buy into that too much. And yeah, finally, Breaker is a very good card, but the best decks for it were Inner Conflict and like some TP warrior builds, or Cocoon, and it's pretty unusable in Cocoon, well, or either unusable or much slower. But it's a good card by itself, and you can use it maybe with like Relinquished, that's cool, or some other like more rogue decks, or maybe some new like just good warrior stuff. Yeah, Kaiser Glider still a little less relevant, but maybe used with the Apprentice engine or Shadow Reborn. The Noblemen crossout might become relevant if people do play like Apprentice still and more passive moth strategies, so I'd consider siding Noblemen at least. Soul Exchange is really underused currently, mostly used in Spellproof Armor, and it's fine there, but you could maybe play more copies in an Apprentice deck now if you really like the tribute stuff. But on the other hand, we might just need better tribute monsters for this to be worthwhile. Maybe we'll get those in the GX box. And yeah, warriors might see a resurgence with like just Parasite, good warriors. Rota is legal now. And Charging Gaia is still like cool with Command Knight, making it a 2300 card. And being Charging Gaia, first of all, I always hated playing this into Moth, since this might just be suicide, as I can never set it, and that's just going to be making me vulnerable to Moth. But that's going to be less of concern now, which is really cool. And another thing, as I said, Floodgate Trap Hole has become more powerful, and I don't know how good it is going to be in the end, but I see a lot of hype for it, so either way people are going to be playing it at first. And having a 2100 meter, even after Floodgate trap hole, means your opponent might have to waste resources to actually get through to your life points after resolving the Floodgate trap hole. So yeah, charging Gaia becomes a little better in my opinion. And yeah, one more thing about Blade Knight. If people actually want to play the flip strategies, Blade Knight will help remove old Vindictive Magicians and stuff without wasting your own resources. Yeah. And then in this last pile I gathered some decks that I wanted to talk about and maybe people might want to reconsider for the future. So Spellproof Armor. I personally hate this skill because it's made me like kind of build my deck around it despite it not being like a top tier threat. And like if I just play good spells like Book of Moon, Shrink, Offerings to the Doomed, those might be good against like some top tier decks, but then this Spellproof Armor deck just makes those useless. So I either have to like take the L in game 1 and just like side maybe Sphere Karibos or traps against it, but even traps can be a little annoying once they get Shinzo out. So yeah, but what's important here is that one of the worst matchups for this was of course Inner Conflict, since yeah, they just steal a monster and they had an easy out for Shinzo or Colossus without wasting any cards and just tributing, and then you the Spellproof Armor player has to out the Kaiser Glider or Shinzo, and that might waste a lot of resources as well. But right now, yeah, things are looking better for machine enthusiasts. Guardians of the Tomb is kind of in a similar vein as Inner Conflict. Like, if you're just playing a good stuff deck, Inner Conflict just was the best thing you could do. And Inner Conflict also facilitated your opponent summoning Shinzo more often. And once Shinzo is on the field, the Guardians of the Tomb player loses. And that's a little annoying. But yeah, with less Shinzo, unless like Spellproof Armor becomes really popular, I can see this being a little better. And Zoma is good, getting draws off of Zoma is really nice. And Swamp Mirror is like fine, you can have some cute synergies with it. For example, with a Command Knight you can make it 2200 body. And yeah, it's fine, it's fun. Probably not like it's, I don't predict it's going to be top tier. Then for Rise of the Fallen, these always felt like, why would I want to use this? Like, yeah, I just revive a fairy and tribute summon a bigger fairy, but there were better options. Now this might see a little more play. Just like some people do play fairy decks, but yeah, conflict fairies are dead now, making Rise of the Fallen a potential option for some people. And there's like Kelbeck is pretty nice into some matchups. With Zolga you can gain a lot of life points, and just yeah, Valhalla can summon big monsters like Parshath for free, Joan for free, and it's overall pretty cool. You can even maybe use Dimensional Alchemist. Not so sure about that, but I just like Dimensional Alchemist, and I hope someone could find a good use for that card as well, maybe with this skill reviving it. Skull Servants. Now on the other hand, you will play less into Moth, less into Conflict, which are just super easy outs for this. But on the other hand, if people really max out on the Graveyard Hate, you might be getting into real trouble. Like, people didn't perhaps prepare against your deck, but they just happen to have Kaikus and Banishers and Lost Winds everywhere, and then you lose because of your deck also losing the things that XYZ loses to. So yeah, it's gain something, you lose something. Well, unfortunate. Then Nightmare Sonic Blast and Serpent Night Dragon. Zombina will be related to this as well. So, as some people may know, Serpent Night Dragon with Nightmare Sonic Blast used to be a top tier strategy before Trials of the Kingdom, and it just got power crept by Moth, but now Moth is going to be seen less, and Inner Conflict won't just steal this for free and ruin your entire strategy. There are definitely reasons to consider playing Serpent Night Dragon again, and with the changes to how skills work, Nightmare Sonic Blast is no longer considered a card effect. So anything that is triggered by card effects, like Zombina, is no longer going to trigger from Nightmare Sonic Blast, making it a lot more useful as removal. Another card that this applies to would be Illusionist Faceless Magician, at least. So yeah. The skill got kinda buffed, and yeah, you have tools like Silent Doom from Battle City that weren't around back when Serpent Night Dragon was a huge thing before. Definitely going to be interesting to see if people play this as well. So of course we have Konami gave us a lot of warrior support back in the day for speed duels, but I feel like they kinda held back, and unfortunately water isn't as good as I would like it to be. But Kairushin makes your stuff unaffected by traps, so if you can establish this early on, and then your opponent has a lot of traps like Lost Winds or Floodgate trap holes, Widespread Ruins, getting your stuff unaffected by traps with the Terror from the Deep skill and Kairushin could be decent, and there are less threats for the Kairushin on the field. Now, not to mention the Umi will actually make the XYZ pieces smaller by 200, so that's kinda cute, I guess. Gaia, also like a big beater deck, having less outs with Inner Conflict not being there, and if opponents are going to play the Apprentice decks or just like slower Moth decks, there could be just like a lot of things to run over with the Gaia and get the draw effect triggered. Maybe, I kind of feel like if you want to play this kind of a beater deck, Spellproof Armor is a lot of the times better, but Gaia can be really good against like slower stall decks with a lot of defense cards. So it has its merits, definitely. Relinquished, I personally like this card a lot, and while your opponent can no longer conflict this at all, even if they try to play this for some desperate reasons, there is a huge nerf in the way your opponents can now Floodgate trap hole your 1000 dice spell summon, so you can't just get a free steal against anything but Lost Wind anymore, which is unfortunate. You're going to be hit by Book of Moon, Floodgate trap hole, Offerings are Doomed, and if you don't have an Illusionist Faceless Magician set up, that's going to make things really annoying for you. Alternatively, you can use the pre-prep build, which is a little less consistent, but it has its upsides in the aggressive ways. It can even OTK sometimes. And yeah, Shadow Reborn in that deck is another cool option. Big ritual decks, they both have their own skills. And without Inner Conflict, I have said that like a dozen of times by now, but they were both like outs that kind of just played around the protection with Ritual of Black Mastery and Spell of Mask. So maybe you could use this more, and like the Mass Beast skill, it wants your Mass Beast to be destroyed by battle, by card effect rather, sorry. So a Union deck would a lot of the time want to just use a fusion for this, but if they do use a fusion for this, they're going to trigger the skill, and that's pretty much what you want anyway. Yeah, they're ritual decks, but I think they got relatively boosted to maybe like unplayable tier to, hey, maybe you win some games with it, and that's always better than what they were before. Then, yeah, another big box monster, Dark Paladin. has less outs now, and can negate powerful spells like Union Hanger or Soul Exchange, but it's still like a big commitment to go into, can be inconsistent, but people like Dark Paladin, so go ahead and try if you're interested in that. Despair also, like the Viral Despair deck. With less moth you don't have the 3500 beater hovering on the field as much, and it even walls the XYZ Dragon Cannon if you can just like maybe Lost Wind it. And yeah, deck out. Some people of course think this is degenerate, and that's partially true, but it feels slightly more playable right now, I guess. Then yeah, Dark Necrophilia, big weakness to Inner Conflict and Moth in having to be destroyed. But what I really hate about this is that it's smaller than Ally of Justice Clauselus, and it becomes a spell. So as long as Spellproof Armor sees interest, this like Into the Darkness Below or any Fiend decks with Dark Necrophilia are going to be severely crippled by that fact. And finally, there's Tomb Barrel Dragon and Tomb Dark Magician. So this can be used for a very explosive start with like getting Tomb Dark Magician into the grave with something like Foolish Burial, and then discarding a Tomb card to summon Doom Barrel Dragon on your first turn for 5100 attack on the field, and Barrel Dragon ready to destroy cards potentially if you get good coin tosses. It's just super bricky, and if your first push gets stopped, your whole deck gets stopped unless you top deck really well after that. Yeah, but I think that's mostly it. Yeah, unions are going to be really good, but just prepare for the matchup. It's not going to be tier 0, and there are ways to beat. That is pretty fair in the end. It does have some inevitability, like if you let them resolve multiple scrambles, that's going to be really complicated for you, but like don't be too afraid of the deck, just prepare for it accordingly, and you can win that deck. But personally, I'm really excited about the upcoming format even before Speed Duel GX box. But yeah, if you listened this far in the video, I might have gotten a little rambly. Just comment down below what you're excited to test and what you think about the other good decks besides like Unions and Spellproof Armor that are going to be relevant, and yeah, just share your thoughts, and I'll if you have any questions I'll also answer to those. But this is it for this video. Have a good one. Bye.